All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining our call. This is the last series of the webinar for the Aviation X Lab Moonshots. However, if there is popular demand, we might launch 1 or 2 more webinars sometime during the mid of March, so please do stay tuned. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself real quick. My name is Amna Rida. I am the Aviation X Lab manager. I have with me on the call as well Najoud Al Khalidi. She is the XLab coordinator, and the two of us manage the Aviation X Lab program. You can just jump to the next slide. Thank you. Just a quick introduction on Aviation X Lab. The Aviation X Lab was launched in October 2019 after a signing with His Highness in October 17. And the entire objective behind Aviation X Lab is to bring together leading aviation partners to really try to understand what does the future of aviation look like and what are the sort of innovations that we want to focus on. Our partners in this initiative are Emirates Airline, Airbus, Collins Aerospace, GE, and Thales as well. This is cycle 2 of Aviation X Lab. We launched cycle 1 in October 2019, obviously right before COVID hit. Our focus during cycle 1 was entirely on sustainability. And so our moonshot was, how do you create a carbon negative aviation industry? We completed the cohort with 3 startups. This is cycle 2 of Aviation X Lab, which I'm going to run you into greater detail. Right, if we can just jump to the next slide, Najoud. Thank you. Before we start into cycle 2 and what the focus areas are, I'd like to introduce to you the council members who we have on the call with us as well. The council members of Aviation X Lab are subject matter experts in this domain, and they are representatives from each of the partners that we have. We have on the call with us a couple of them, so I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. But just to dig a little bit deeper about what the council member roles are, so the council members are going to be the one assessing and validating each and every one of the applications. They will then be the ones nominating the top selected startups to go to the board. This is for the pre-selected phase. Once you're selected into Aviation X Lab, then the council members' role transforms more into a mentorship role, and they're going to be a part of the validation process when it comes to the POC, and the trial and building the solution as well. So they're part of the journey from A to Z, I like to always say. With that, I'll just introduce our first council member that we have with us, Rami Samra. Rami Samra is the council member from Emirates Airline. He's been actually with the Aviation X Lab from cycle 1 and cycle 2 as well. Rami, I'm just going to hand it over to you if you want to introduce yourself and your role. Thank you. Rami, just a...
That's why I prefer face-to-face meetings.
I know.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Amna, for the introduction. My name is Rami Al Samra, and I'm the Senior Manager of Business Solution and Service Development. There are 3 key areas in my role. I look after identify, define, and develop technology and non-technology solutions for business units within airport services in Dubai and the network. I also look after process defining and looking at business change that may result as a result of technology change or not technology change. And I look at budgeting and governance, looking at project portfolio, the portfolio of airport services in terms of projects and initiatives, and making sure that there are proper business cases and benefit realization post-implementation. Thank you. Now you're on mute. You're still on mute, Amna.
Don't ever buy touch laptops. Okay. No, I was just saying that, letting the audience know that we're going to spend some more time today with Rami specifically on this call, just because Rami obviously leads the airport operations at Emirates, and he's going to provide us with a lot of insights when it comes to connections and transfer. So we do have quite an exciting session coming up. With that, I'll just go ahead and jump to Gary. Gary, if I think you're like the godfather of XLab. You've been with us from the very start. I was going to say grandfather, but that was not appropriate. So the godfather.
I prefer godfather. It's very much.
I think godfather is a lot more fitting. Gary, if you want to just share with us I want to say your very new, exciting role as well, and of course, kind of your input to the XLab. Thank you.
Thanks, Amina, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be online. So my name is Gary Wicks. I have the privilege of working for Airbus for quite a long time now, and very much in the innovation community of Airbus. I'm a member of our newest innovation unit called Airbus Scale, where I lead what is called the venture framing activities. So this is where we start to shape the potential new companies. And the purpose of Airbus Scale is to create disruptive new companies for Airbus, or rather reword that, the companies which can disrupt positively in the market and which Airbus can make an influence. I also have the second role where I have the privilege again of leading the Innovation Federation of Airbus. We do not have a single innovation entity in Airbus. We have a federation of units distributed across the whole group, from defense and space, helicopters, our subsidiaries, and of course Airbus Commercial. So that's a fantastic place for me to be, because I get to see, touch, and hear just about everything that goes on at a company level, which is very, very exciting.
Thank you, Gary. This is actually fantastic. I mean, I know that Airbus does a lot in the innovation space, but to kind of structure it under a federation, that's quite interesting and not very common.
We see it as an innovation in itself, because to be frank, we've tried a number of structures during the years, and I was a member of the very first corporate innovation anywhere in Airbus, and that had some strengths, but didn't actually best fit and serve the company. So what we have now is an evolution, which we think is the good balance between agility and being responsive to the quite diverse needs of the company in terms of market, and also leverage the collective strengths and intelligence and power of the whole company. So that's we took a step. We weren't sure it was going to work. It seemed to be developing very nicely and very positively. So we think we've got the balance right, but we continue to iterate and improve.
Okay, that's super. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. All right, last but not least, we have Mark with us, so from Collins Aerospace. Mark, I think you also have a super exciting role. If you just want to share with the team as well, then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Hello, I'm in applied technology for Collins Aerospace. I have a similar function to Gary. I work across the corporation to match the skills and expertise from various organizations throughout, to match them up with other parts of the organization to find new solutions together and bring new features to the market.
Thank you, Mark. I think just looking at the council portfolio, it's quite fantastic. Everyone in a different domain, but really with the same objective. So I'm excited for this cycle. All right, speaking about the cycle, Najid, if we can just jump to the next slide to take our audience through what the focus area will be. Thank you. All right. I just want to give a quick background on Aviation X Lab. As I mentioned, we work on moonshots. And so moonshots are your Mission Impossible objectives that you want to reach. And the exciting thing about a moonshot is that it's never one solution that will get you to that destination, but it's a collective steps towards that journey. And speaking of journeys, what we've decided for Aviation X Lab to focus on cycle 2 is bringing joy back into the journey. And that really entails the entire journey of the passenger, from the second that you book your flight all the way until you arrive at your destination. And why this was so important to the Aviation X Lab board members is that with COVID, a lot of operations were impacted, but also pre-COVID, traveling became more of a process than joy. And there's just a lot of different things that come in place, whether it's security or document check, or just even, the lag time that you have in the airport. And whilst there are things that can be controlled and things that can't be controlled, our mission is to really identify what are the main pain points today, and how can we try to minimize these pain points and identify opportunities that can really transform those pain points. With that, we've identified 3 focus areas. If we can just jump to the next slide and do it. Thank you. The first focus area is doorway to runway, and that's quite literally from the second that you leave your doorstep all the way until you arrive at the plane's door. And our focus is to try to make that a seamless experience. Then you have the in-flight, and if you try to imagine a hotel in the sky, that's really where we want to reach. And then the last part, which is today's focus area, is connections and transfer. And we look at that as a joyful step. Now, for those of you on the call who have been on connections, or you've used a hub airport, I think you all know how troubling, maybe not troubling, but how challenging the entire process can be, especially if it's a different country with different languages. I'm going to have Rami speak a little bit more about the challenges, but we've chosen this because we've identified this as really a true pain point for passengers pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID as well. And so this is really going to be an area that we want to see what are potential solutions and innovations that we can onboard to try and facilitate connections and transfers. With that, Rami, I'm going to have a couple of questions that I've lined out that I'd like to sort of ask you as well. This is open for any of the council members if you have any input as well. Rami, I think one of the first questions I have is, we'd love to understand your role, obviously you being in the airport, and why you believe that we've identified connections and transfers as a key focus area for the passenger journey.
So I think, thank you, Amna. I think that's a great question. Why connection and transfer is an important area. If I just give a quick brief, Emirates or any international carriers that operate hub and spoke know that in hub and spoke operation, you rely on transfer passenger, and 70% or 60% of your passengers are transfer, and 30 to 40% of your passengers are joining. Now that has changed during COVID, but I strongly believe that hub and spoke concept will still be in demand post-COVID. So why connection is important? Because the behavior of the customers has changed. A lot of airlines looking at digital experience to introduce seamless journey. So connection is an important area that carries a lot of passengers. 70% of the airline in hub and spoke concept, which Emirates has, is from transfer. So pre-COVID, yes, there was a little work going on to enhance the experience for transfer passengers, but I think post-COVID we'll have to rethink that journey and match it with the expectation of customers post-COVID.
Thank you, Rami. I think that makes fantastic sense, and it's a point that a lot of times we might oversee, especially because we are operating out of a hub. We don't necessarily use it as a hub, but GXB is considered a hub, and most airports worldwide operate under a similar pattern. My other question is, of course, now when we look at connections and transfers, Rami, would you say that that has been impacted because of COVID?
Of course. The first, if you look at connection, mainly people, when you have disruption, it impacts immediately your transfer passengers. Passengers are coming from east, west, or transiting in the middle to continue their journey, and they're disrupted. So transfer, as I said, is a very important area. If you look pre-COVID, 55% of the airlines had disruptions and delays. That is normal delays and normal disruptions and cancellations. So you can imagine during COVID, the area is impacted, and what we see, the changes to the operation was mainly on restrictions, border closures, and the processes. So if we talk about restrictions, when airlines have closed their borders, we couldn't carry transfer passengers. Now that's second is the restriction and I think Gary will support me in that the inconsistency in applying rules between countries. Every country, and IATA tried, to be honest with you, to have a consistent approach across all countries in terms of what is required for customer and what's not required. They were unable to do that, and hence every country had their own rules and regulation. Now, for me, if I look at it, this took me back to transaction time. Pre-COVID, as an airline, we were looking at moving away from transaction into an interaction with customers, so that more of automation, empowering customers. And then COVID hit us and took us back to transaction time, because every customer required to see an agent to check the PCR, to validate the country requirement, because it was not standardized. So to answer your question, yes, it had impacted connection, and the changes that we see is more restrictions, more relying on an agent, unfortunately, more relying on people to process customers. That's where we are today, hoping that now with more countries easing restrictions, we go back and rethink of the journey, as I said, and see what we can do.
Thank you for that, Rami. No, I think these are a fantastic point. And like you said, we were on a path pre-COVID to really look at more automation. And of course, that has been drastically impacted because of COVID, but we are relooking all of that entire journey. Gary, I'd love to also get your viewpoints. I know that Airbus is looking into this field as well, but also as a passenger who does use the hub model quite often.
I do, and I'm at the end of a spoke because although Toulouse, where I'm based, has an ever-growing airport and more direct flights, most of my life involves connecting through somewhere and have a variety of options. And this is the issue. So if you permit me, I'll speak from the heart as a passenger, more than an employee of Airbus. But it's one of those situations where everything's familiar, but it's sufficiently different to cause problems. You think you know, but that's part of the danger of even for an experienced traveler. Things look the same, but then you discover that they're not enough the same, and it causes real delays and issues and irritation. And I have to say that when trying to book travel, when I see there's a connection involved, my heart sinks, because I think this is already a bad step I'm going to take, just trying to navigate from the door of one airplane onto the door of another airplane. Do I have enough time? Do I have to change terminal? And to me, on my own experience, some of the worst is where you discover that you've either intentionally or unintentionally ended up back on land side of an airport, as I did in Frankfurt, and then all the liquids you have then have to be disposed of. So there's even inconsistency as to when you can stay airside on a transfer and a connection, and when you have to go out to get a bus and go from terminal to terminal. So to be frank, there are so many different permutations and possibilities in connection. It's not like you go up one jet bridge and down another. There are lots of things points of confusion that can be introduced in between, and I'm sure many people on the call on the webinar today will have similar experiences. So to me, it's this fragmentation, inconsistency, similarity of rules which are not quite the same, and the quite different approaches to navigating and moving people between, say, terminals or actually within terminals. You put that all together, that is a major source, I believe, of disruption and disappointment and frustration. And I think that's holding us back. So I think everybody would love to have point to point through one terminal. Life isn't like that, and I don't think it should be. It should then is the call for us to see what we can do collectively, and I believe it is a collective response to try and bring some more harmony and coherence, so that it isn't such a disruption moving from the door of one aircraft to another, or the door of one airport to the exit door of another. So as a passenger, I say this is a big call for action on my side. Please help. Please help us sort this out.
Rami, you have your job sorted for you.
No, I mean, the only disagreement I have, we don't like point to point because we are a hub and spoke. That's not. So, but yes, you're right, Gary. We will need to look at the transfer experience, and I feel, as I said, the demand on hub and spoke will continue to be there. Post-COVID, that's my personal view. So we really need to look at ways to improve the transfer experience and make it as seamless as possible in Dubai.
Rami, I just have I think maybe for the audience's sake, right? When you try to speak about the transfers experience today, right? What would you say are, if we want to label like the top 2 challenges that you face operationally when it comes to transfer, what would those 2 challenges be?
Personalization and managing irregularities.
Okay. Do you mind clarifying on when you say personalization?
So I think we started pre-COVID, and unfortunately it was stopped during COVID, but I think we should continue to do that in knowing the customer preference, their travel history, and managing their journey in a better way by personalizing the rebooking, the connections, providing them with wayfinding digitally. So digitalizing the experience in transit. Now,
Mhm.
the other challenge we have in terms of irregularities, and I say in when we have disruptions, when we have delays, when we have cancellations, tomorrow when we are hit with tsunami of travelers, we will have delays and we will go back to cancellations, we will go back to misconnections. I think we need to really quickly act on this and allow customers, and we have seen during COVID, people learned how to use technology. They
Yeah.
learned how to order online. They learned how to manage all their activities while sitting at home during the lockdown uh, through technology. So I think the number of people using technology will increase in the past, in the future, uh, and it will not be only for a group of people, like we always say, Generation X or Z or Y. It will be wider. So I think looking at the disruptions and rebooking, allowing customers to resolve that challenge, empowering customers to rebook themselves, to manage their journey
Yeah.
themselves, so they don't have to rely on people, and choose which options they want, which flight they want. From experience, I know every time we rebook customers, and they go, Amna, they go together, personalization and dealing with irregularities. Because from my experience, we always book passengers and they come to the counter and they don't like the options we have given them. They don't like where we have rebooked them. They don't like the hotel we have put them in. So if we can tackle personalities and look at travel histories and understand customers better, at the same time, empowering them to manage their journey when they are transiting, that is, we have resolved two big challenges for us. And
Yeah.
we will have an increased number of passengers. We'll have people who would love to transit Dubai, would love to fly with Emirates, because we take care of their journey. And especially, as Gary said, when it's transit, people are more nervous when you're transiting airports.
Yeah.
But if we make it seamless and empower them to choose what they want and manage their bookings, that's a big win for us.
Thank you, Rami. Rami, absolutely. And I think the only thing I would add is that you were speaking about personalization quite a lot. And I think when it comes to the passenger journey, there are multiple aspects that can be personalized. And today there are AI capabilities, and I know we've spoken about this before, that can understand you as a passenger, what your preferences are, from your meals to what time you enjoy flying, to what airline, to which seat, all these different things, right? And so if you automatically are able to receive that without really having that face-to-face interaction, with the portal at the airport, then obviously that would automatically enhance your experience. I'll just target that to Gary as well. Gary, as a passenger who obviously has been down this path before, there's always that debate between it's always important to have the personalization, but also that human touch is equally important. But if there were systems in place that would remove that human aspect, but would make it a lot more efficient for you as a connecting passenger, would you say that would optimize the experience?
I think it'd go a long way. And as Rami was saying, if I had to prioritize as a first step, as a passenger, I would really love to be confident that I know what's coming. I know what the next step is, and there are no nasty surprises. So
Yeah.
if we can do that by ultimately, if every airport experience, I mean from the passenger, was the same, I don't mean in terms of the shopping and so on, but particularly in terms of how to check in, the structure of the check-in, how to get through security, how to move between terminals. That would be wonderful. Now that isn't going to happen. So we have to deal with the reality of very differing airport architectures, particularly with the continued expansion of the 21st century. I happen to my favorite bad example is Schiphol in Amsterdam, which was like a fantastic airport, so easy to navigate, and then they expanded, and now it's just like every other airport. It's a nightmare. So you can even start with high aspirations, but maintaining them over the evolution is difficult. So that's from a physical point of view, and I agree with Rami. I think the time has come where, with the technologies now available, it's time for the digital layer, I think, to really come to the fore and help deal with, mitigate, or eliminate many of the complexities that are naturally occurring from the physical architecture of airports and that infrastructure. So I think the time is right. You asked me 10 years ago, think, yeah, we'd like to do it, but it's not possible.
Yeah.
But now I think we really have that opportunity in the hands to not remove, but at last overcome many of the issues that as passengers we face.
I think also, Amna, I want to say we're not necessarily removing the human interaction. We're changing the role of the agent in the future. So yes, we're pushing some of the transaction we're empowering customers to do, but then we are freeing our agents to take care of customers, to guide them, to help them. You know, you've got people with families, with kids. Give that service.
Yeah.
Not like today, stuck behind the counter doing more of transaction.
I think Rami bring in a fantastic point of view said, because it really is becoming a lot more efficient. And today it's challenging at the airport to find a staff that isn't occupied with the passenger, even in, you know, for critical needs. So that's a great point. Thank you, Rami. Rami, we have a question from the audience that I think would be a good time to tackle it along the lines that we're discussing. And the question is, would you say a close collaboration with the airport authority can help improve the transfer experience?
Yeah, of course. I mean, see, there's always an airline-airport relationship, and in my view, airport and airlines should collaborate and work together during bad times and good times. So we have seen a good coordination between airports and airlines during SARS, during Gulf War, during 11 September, and now during COVID. So I think airlines can't work alone without the collaboration from airport authorities. So we have a few examples where we work together with stakeholders within the airport. If we look at the biometric initiatives that had Dubai Airport's approval, it had engineering, we have the security and immigration approval. So it's all a group of people. So definitely collaboration will help us to improve the transfer experience. We have security checks at every transfer experience. That requires improvement. We know that there are new technologies with regards to screening passengers and checking their handbags. So working with police, for example, is important to make the whole experience seamless.
Yeah, I agreed with you, Rami. And I think I always look at the airport as a family, right? Or if we say an octopus, where all the connecting pieces sort of have to work together to make that fantastic experience. Otherwise, it becomes very fragmented. Because if you have a fantastic transfer experience, but your security experience is really challenging, it's always going to impact it. And so having that sort of harmonious balance is what you're looking for.
We should be looking at end-to-end experience. It's not only the airline. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mark, I know that we have you, so I'd love to kind of get your input as well from the other side of the world on when it comes to connections and transfers.
Well, so I would add two parts. One, the joy of journey that you referenced, that often the joy is to go somewhere new and adventure out. And so my colleagues mentioned, even though the steps may be familiar, when you're going somewhere new, there's uncertainty and doubt. And so if you can make things familiar, secure, and eliminate some of that, they can focus on the adventure of the new place and not on the concern of.
Oh no, I think we lost. Oh. Mark, do we have you with us?
I think.
Oh, I think might have dropped off. All right, Gary, I know you have your hands up. We'll just go to your comment until Mark rejoins.
Yeah, I put it up, then it came down because I lost the moment. But as we have a little break, I think this is a very delicate balance that we need to strike in whatever solutions we provide, because there is a danger that we emphasize efficiency. Now, efficiency is important for many, many reasons, but from a passenger perspective, where efficiency dominates, we tend to become we have the expression particularly in the UK, to being part of a sausage machine. You're forced into a machine, you wind the handle and you're pushed through it, and you're not an individual, you're not personalized, you just have to follow every step of the way, and you're like a package being moved. So I would really dearly like to see whatever we were able to imagine and construct to manage that balance well between efficiency and the experience. Because sometimes it's not about efficiency, it is about joy. It is about choice. It is about having the time to reflect and do other things. And if it only becomes about efficiency and moving 50% more people through a space, I think that is going to be counterproductive. So somehow within this technological view we're going to take, we need to be very sensitive to the balance between efficiency and maintaining the comfort and experience and hopefully the joy of the people who are actually moving through these spaces together.
Thank you, Gary. I think that's absolutely essential and key. And when we speak about joy of journey, I love that you use the sausage machine example, because it really takes out, sometimes we look at the airports as one big machine, right? And I think back to Rami's point, when you look at personalization, you remove that automation of people, but you kind of look at the human factor and how do you personalize it according to what they want, because end of the day, your passengers are your customers and they're the ones that you want to honor and be loyal to. On that point, Mark, I know that you were, sorry, I think you dropped off halfway, we lost you. I'll just go ahead for you to continue your comments.
Well, the other part I was going to add that is related to the analogy just to reference is today, as you're on that journey, many of those interactions are actually triggered by necessary steps or abnormal steps. So if you do have a flight issue and you have to interact with the passengers, it is now a queue of irritated travelers. Or if you have to board or book, you have a queue of a line again. So if we provide a better solution for that, you get rid of that synchronization of them all trying to do the same thing at the same time. And it would actually free up the agents, the customers, the airlines to actually interact by choice, actually interact on a helpful note, not on something that triggered them to all have to, a necessity to be there.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I think you're right on point, because a lot of times what we see is panic leads you to react. Whereas if you remove that panic element and things are conducted in a very different fashion, if it's personalized, again, to your point, then it's a very different sort of experience. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Before we jump to the audience's question, there's just one last question I had, and maybe if you don't mind leading with this. When we try to reimagine bringing back joy to journey and reimagine a redefined airport experience, what would you say an ideal experience of connections and transfers would look like?
That's not a very short question,
right? It's a strong question to end with. And again, if we're speaking about moonshots, you can go as kind of as wild as ambitious, but yeah.
There are two journeys. One is a happy flow and unhappy flow, if you say. In a happy flow, I would say that passengers coming, they arrive to a hub, they pass through and the high advanced, we draw that journey, high advanced security, for example, no hassle, no taking out of your handbags. You don't have to come and go back forward. Seamless introduction of biometric to make them, move through touch points seamlessly without having to present any papers or passports, and at the same time boarding. Now that's a normal happy flow where you navigate through the airport. You can do shoppings. You can spend your time. So your transit time. We always say that we are proud to say that we connect you within 2 hours, but we don't want that 1 hour from the 2 hours to go only by clearing security and trying to complete your transactions before you go to the departure level. We really want you to enjoy that 2 hours and spend it in an airport. So that's an ideal experience. Now, in an unhappy flow, how quickly I can, redesign that journey, how quickly I can look at your bookings, how quickly I can, bring that journey back to normal. So in an unhappy flow, when you're delayed, when you're canceled, as an airline, how can I deliver an exceptional experience when we have problems and when we have cancellations? And that is I can see that only by enhancing the digital capability, which I go back to empowering customers and having people on the floor to welcome them and taking care and address any exceptionals, not all of them. So that's honestly, that's how I see it, because when people are transiting, they are worried. They really want to spend time. If transiting, they want to go to coffee shops, sit. If they have with kids, they go to our lounges. I don't want to lose any of that connection time to complete my processes.
Thank you, Rami. I think those were fantastic points. And just, two things, if I'm hearing right, like you said, I like the fact that you separated based on a happy flow and maybe not such a happy flow, because there are two very different experiences. And one thing that is a fantastic highlight for the audience and for potential applicants is response time, right? And so, there are always going to be things beyond our control when it comes to the airport, but how quickly do we identify those potential red flags, whether it's as an airline, as airport services, but also how quickly can you respond to your customers, even if it's not through face-to-face, because that can obviously, there's human bandwidth at the end of the day. So I think these are great points that you had made, Rami. Gary, I know that you have, we'll just jump straight ahead to you.
I will avoid the overly idealistic view of, everything is perfect. And then in the real world, things happen, and we have to accept that they happen, weather, storms, mechanical problems, you name it, it's going to happen. It's a very sophisticated, complex system that we're part of. So I don't expect it to be fixed. But on my side, what the things that would make me, I feel it'd make me much happier, would be if I had in control of my time airside. I don't want to spend any time landside. I want to get airside and choose what I do with it. And that can de-stress me. My time, how I want to spend it, doing what I want to do. Next thing I want, and this is something we should be able to address relatively easy, if the actors are able to play together, I want to be informed. I don't like surprises. I don't like not knowing. I don't like not being able to hear the announcements in an airport, because the audio systems tend to be very, very poor. So I want to be informed. So at least I'm aware what's going on and what is likely to happen. So that will de-stress me. And with all of that, so I want always to be informed, by the way, not just partially informed. And the third is I want choice. I want to say, okay, something's happening. What choices do I have? If I don't know what's going to happen and I'm fearful that I don't have a choice, or it's going to cost me a lot of money, that is also stressful. So on my side, the three things I would really, really want to have is more time for my time, more information, always to be informed, and have choice. If we can do those three things, I think that will go a long way to de-stressing me, if not everybody else.
Correct, and that's sorry, Gary, you spot on. That's what I meant by saying, empowering customer, giving them an option, understanding their preferences, and try to, bring that journey, if it's disrupted, back to normal, based on their preference and what they like.
May I add better than normal? Because there's the opportunity to improve standards as well, not just maintain them.
No, the new norms.
It's as if Rami and Gary had coordinated behind the scenes, but this is completely natural.
No.
All right. I know we have one last question. We're short on time, so we'll just tackle the question before we close off. And the question is, I think that's question to tackle the passenger tsunami. Rami, someone had the question of, would you share some initiatives based on technologies that you come up with, or any future potential ones that could help the seamless experience or less hassle for the staff? Again, not to jump into solutions, but would you sort of imagine specific things that might ease passenger flow?
I think we pre-COVID we started looking at we started investing, as I said, in technology, and we, because of COVID, we're trying to expedite now, and because of the change behavior of customers, we're trying to expedite some of the technology and capabilities we have. So some of the initiative is we're scaling up on biometric, which everybody knows that we have started the biometric at boarding gates and lounges. So we're scaling up and adding more gates, because we're seeing that it's providing a seamless journey for customers, especially traveling to US. In terms of connection, we are now investing on rebooking application, allowing, as I said, giving options to customers when they are disrupted to rebook themselves, choose the hotels they want, choose the flight they want, if they are disrupted. So that's something that's going on. That's one of the initiatives. We are also discussing in discussion with Dubai airports on the capacity in transit, and trying to find ways to introduce more self-service kiosk so that customers can find their ways and also change their bookings without having to contact an agent. So these are some of the initiatives. There's a discussion with police on screening machine, but that's at early stage.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Rami. We just have one final question, Rami, before we close off. And the question is, when it comes to specific touch points such as baggage and or the passenger experience with baggage, is that anything that is in relevance when it comes to connections and transfers? Is that considered a pain point?
Pain point is how quickly we rebook and we reroute baggage. Yeah, it's a challenge when you have a major disruption, but it was a challenge before. We have introduced a new system that's called Emirates Bag Connect that gives visibility to all the people on the ramp on where the bags are, and if we reroute any baggage, so it gives an alert to the people on the ramp to reroute the bags. It also gives the same view to the call center. So we had this issue before that there was a disconnect between people in the operation and the call center. Yeah. So now we have only one platform that has all the baggage details, including the network. I think we are one of the few airlines that has a same baggage system network wise.
Global,
so
wow.
if the call center calls the agent, if the passenger calls the call center to find about the bag, they will be able to give them the answer and they will be able to tell them where the bags is. So there is this initiative is going on. We're almost at the end of it, and hopefully maybe by third quarter of our financial year, which is the end of this year, the passengers will be able to track their bags, and even when we deliver it to them, they will be able to see when the baggage is arriving and where it is, and if it's handed over to a driver, where the driver is. So full, like an Uber experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite fantastic.
So, I mean, if I may, I'd really emphasize the importance of keeping baggage or having baggage in this picture. I have so many personal tales to tell you about. My bags have visited more countries than I have. So I would also think about, that's wonderful to hear from Rami saying that. I hope to take benefit of it. But we need to look at the discontinuities of baggage transfer and experience when you're getting on one airline and coming on another, and through different terminals to terminals. So I emphasize the need for this to look at the discontinuities where you are jumping between different players in the system. That's where I would like to see an improvement, big improvement. Right?
Thank you, Gary. I think absolutely. I think the baggage question came because a lot of us have experienced that, especially when traveling. If we're changing airlines, maybe not on the same network, but different networks, it's always challenging. But we're going to hold Rami accountable by end of Q4 for that, and we'll see.
We should. I mean, we have done, I think. I mean, the real test, to be honest with you, we rolled out the system during the lockdown. So the real test will be when the travel demand picks up. So we'll see.
Yeah, everything is easy when it's not scaled. Absolutely. Thank you. Team, I know we've just officially ran out of time, but just before we close off, I want to thank everyone. So I think we have one last question. Shafi, you're with us? Oh, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
I have a question. I know that this is being recorded as I see it from the screen. Is it possible to share a link?
Yes, absolutely. So before I close off, the links are going to be stored on YouTube. We'll share a link with you. You can access this one and also the previous 2 webinars. So everything is going to be shared.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mark. And of course, a big thank you to everyone who joined us today. It was such a fantastic session. I didn't get a chance to go through the rest of my slides, but I think everyone by now knows where to apply, and we'll share the link as well on our YouTube channels. Otherwise, really appreciate this fantastic session. It was very natural, but very valuable, I'm sure. So thank you all for being with us today. As I said, we are going to look at hosting one last webinar before the applications close at the end of March. So do stay tuned. And thank you, everyone, for being with us. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Elena. Bye.
For everyone. Take care.